Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Seams podcast. Today we've got Brandon Golden. Brandon is a performance coach with 5 Tool Connection. He's got his BS in kinesiology from East Carolina, got his master's from St. John's in sports management. He began his career as an intern with High Point University, Mississippi State, and Wake Forest before taking a GA position at St. John's, where in 2015 they were Big East tournament champs and regional finalists. During that summer, he also worked with the collegiate national team with USA Baseball. From St. John's, he was at Charleston Southern University as an assistant strength and conditioning coach, where they too were 2016 conference champs. East Carolina was the next stop, where he spent 4 years as a part of East Carolina baseball and once again was part of the 2018 American Conference Tournament Championship team. If we could say one thing here, it's that championship's going wherever he goes, which is, He's also worked in the minors as a performance coach for the Los Angeles Dodgers and now is a performance coach with 5 Tool Connection. I spoke with this guy at the Wake Forest seminar. His presentation was great. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he spoke about at that presentation. Please welcome to the show, Brandon Golden. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Talk to us a bit about your journey, your education, coaching in college, the step to pro ball, and now where you are with 5 Tool Connection.
Yeah. So, from High Point, North Carolina, went to East Carolina undergrad, had a great experience down there learning and kind of laying the framework from a knowledge base of like what I would need to come back and be ready to go as far as like a performance coach, and interned at High Point University for a year and a half while I was, working full time. That's really kind of where it all started, Nunzio. Like I was able to, train teams. I, had responsibilities where like I had my own teams as an intern.
People need to not sleep on the importance of getting a good internship before you consider taking a job and doing this as a career, right?
100%. Like the ability to wear, and it wasn't like the sexiest teams in the world, but I had the golf teams that I programmed for. I had the cheerleading teams that I programmed for. I had a group of lacrosse players that I was solely responsible for training because the full-time coaches had other responsibilities. So like I was able to learn what it was like, not only to like how to act as a college strength coach, but how to program, how to interact with players, how to interact with coaches. I was training the AD for a little while, who's now in charge of the ABCA. Like, there's things like relationships and things like that I've been able to take, all the way through my career. And, then after that, I was there for a year and a half, and the staff was like, all right, man, you've been here for a while. Like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do this. And they were like, all right, well, you need to keep going. Like, where do you want to go next? And got with Brian Neal, who was a baseball strength coach at Mississippi State, and got to work with those guys down there, and it was an awesome experience. And that's kind of really where my career started taking the turn towards baseball, and it was unbelievable. Then got to come back home, was with Wake Forest for a little bit with Ryan Horn and Tim Wright and Dave Bass, Mark Seaver, all those guys over there at Wake, and really got to again continue to learn and be thrown into uncomfortable situations, and that's where I got exposed to some GPS stuff with Ryan with the basketball team. And after that went up to St. John's, and again thrown out of my element again. I'm from High Point, North Carolina, and then was in New York City for 2 years, and that's where I met Corey and Blanks and Bone and all those guys who really just continued to teach me the game of baseball from the baseball side of things. I remember watching video with Corey daily about our guys and like how to get them better, and really, Lindsay, it was awesome because I was able to learn like what was he looking for, and like how could I make his job easier. And Coach Blankmeyer, like you said, like brought me with the collegiate national team, and I got to work with some of the best players in the country, and then just continue to grow that.
When I was starting out my business, RPP, Corey was one of the guys that was sending guys to me, and he was at St. John's. And when I first met him, I was like, wow, this is the most energetic guy I've ever met in my life. And I hadn't seen him for a while until Wake Forest. I saw him at Maryland for a little bit. I did testing down there with him. And then I saw him again here. He's always so positive to be around, and it makes me laugh. I'm releasing his podcast this week, by the way. So
That's awesome.
He's great. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's exactly like my relationship with him is pretty similar. Like he's one of my best friends, taught me a lot about the game. It's really cool to be this close to them now and be consulting with Wake and like have the opportunity to just see him more and continue to learn from him. So that's been awesome. And then, after I left there, Then went to Charleston Southern. Like you said, was with football. We won a conference championship, and then we were able to continue to do some things there that were really positive. But it was just myself and Chad Scott, who's now the director of strength and conditioning at Liberty. Just got that position pretty recently as they left Coastal. But yeah, it was us, and we had to coach hundreds of athletes a day. So like talk about learning and developing and figuring out like what works, but what needs to happen on a grand scale. Like it was awesome. Like it was such a great learning opportunity. And then Blaine Kinsley left East Carolina to work with the Cardinals. And, I'd known Blaine for a long time, and I sent him a message. I said, hey, what's this job open at East Carolina? Like, this is my alma mater. Like, I want to come back. And he goes, hey, it's my job. And I was like, holy crap. Like, he's leaving. And, got to meet Cliff Godwin and Coach Jeff Connors at East Carolina and interview with them. And they offered me the job and was there for a long time. And, then got the opportunity to work with the Dodgers. And, I had known Eric Yavarone, who's the CEO of Five Tool Connection. I met him back in my St. John's days up at Cressy's place, actually. Corey set something up for me to go. Corey, again, set something up for me to go listen to their upper body mentorship. Eric was intern there at the time, and, got to know him a little bit and, just stayed in contact. And the Dodgers, for me, it was one of those things where it was, I felt like I was a really good performance coach, and I felt like I was in a good position. And, for me, I was, let's say I'm 33 at the time. So I was 31 at the time. And it's like, all right, let me go see how good I am. Like, let me go with arguably one of the best organizations in all of professional sports, and let me see where I match up. And like, how do I fit in, and like, what can I learn? And, everybody talks about this all the time, but like the desire is like to be the best. Like, I want to be the best strength coach ever. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like, that's such an arbitrary thing to say, but like for me, it was like, all right, this organization consistently wins. The people they have consistently do things the right way. Not that we didn't in East Carolina, we did things at such a high level. Like you said a minute ago, we hosted a regional 18, we hosted a regional 19. Like, we've continued to win, and people were looking at me and they're like, well, why are you leaving East Carolina? Like, this is a comfortable place. And for me, it was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do, leaving East Carolina. It's, I love that place. I'll have season tickets this year. I'll be down there supporting those guys and trying to, watch those guys break through and go to Omaha. But it wasn't about the personal side of things. For me, it was like, I said I wanted to be the best. I have a family support. It's a little bit different in the strength and conditioning world than it is in the sport coaching world financially. So it was up to me to support my wife and two boys. So that's the decision we made. And honestly, Nunzio, it was one, looking back on it now, like the lifestyle that I get to live now, where I'm in my garage like this. You guys can't see this, but I have a nice garage back here. I have a large area where I get to work out, and train people at, and, big area. We live on an acre, and I get to do things on my own time. We were kind of talking a little bit before of how, RPP has been so impactful on your life and some of the things that you've done before we started the show. But like, that's kind of what I'm getting to live right now at my house. And my home is 200 yards that way. And I get to do things on my own time at a super high level. And I get to go consult and visit people that I want to work with on my time. And it's something that my family's never been able to do, but it's for Emily and I and the boys, like it's been pretty special.
I think the key word there is your kids. Not only do you have kids to support, I think that life with a team, with an organization, for a strength and conditioning coach or a performance coach, many times involves 8 months a year on the road. Me personally, I wasn't willing to not see my family except for like a weekend here and a weekend there for 7 months. So I decided I was going to build my own business in the private sector, and like you're starting to do now. I will tell you that after 15, 16 years of it, I don't have a regret in the world. It was great. But I will say one thing. People that think you own your own business, you don't have to work as much. I always tell people, you just picked the 40 hours a week you can work. Right. It doesn't mean you don't have to work 40 hours a week, because if you think you're going to start your own business and not work 40 hours a week, you're going to have a very short-lived business.
Ain't no doubt about that. I'm out here at 6 a.m, and I'm here till, last night I walked out of here at 8:30. So yeah.
But you can go right home. And I love that. Talk to us a bit about the company you work for, Five Tool Connection.
Yeah. So Five Tool Connection, started by Eric Yavarone and Noah Huff back in 2019. It's a sports performance, sports science program. So what we're doing is we're leveraging our relationship with Output Sports, and we're really able to take our screening process and evaluation tools to the masses. We're also using a company called Sports Trace, where we're able to, break down swings and throwing mechanics and really give people actionable information and take player development to anybody in the country.
Is this an online thing you guys are doing, or do you actually have a facility? I know you work here at your place. Is there a place you can go and train at?
Yeah. So right now, at my house, and then we have another at Eric's house out in Arizona, but we don't have we don't have a facility like you have. It
Right.
started off as a virtual strength conditioning platform, trying to get just good strength and conditioning programs to people. But as it's developed and as things have gone over the past few years, they've done a really good job of seeing what baseball's doing and what the market's doing, and really being able to leverage some of these tools from the performance science side of things, and really refining how can we make this simple and how can we give sound individualized training to anybody in the country. So with our output, somebody signs up with us, say they're in Delaware, we can send them an output and we can train them virtually with all of the assessment tools that that you saw me do out there at Wake Forest. So it's pretty awesome and pretty simplistic, but it's also very impactful and it works pretty well.
Martin from Output Sports just emailed me the other day.
Good.
I was going to look into the device that you used actually at Wake, because we're going to start taking these assessments probably on the road to colleges. The ability to be able to do an assessment on your own on the table to get glenohumeral ER and IR and hip ER and IR and T-spine rotation, lumbar locked, without holding a goniometer and somebody else putting guys into passive ranges of motion. I think it's great that they can wear a device, and now I can, instead of having two guys doing one assessment, I can have two guys doing two assessments. So when we're looking at going and assessing 20 guys, that's now feasible, instead of two guys busting their ass trying to do 20 assessments, which would take us 17 hours. We can fully assess 20 guys in probably 6. So I'm going to investigate that. Talk a little bit about that device from Output Sports that you were using for our listeners, because I found it a really, really practical and really, really time-saving device for any strength coaches out there that are trying to do things on their own.
Yeah, I love it. It's an IMU device, very simplistic in the way that you can use it. We use it like you were just talking about for the ranges of motion. We really like it with the RSI stuff, with our vertical jumps and our 10-5 jumps. It's got VBT access. It's got balance, literally anything you can think of for performance coach. It fits in a nice little case, and you can take it with you and throw it in your backpack or throw it in a suitcase and be ready to roll. So for me, it's a one-stop shop, simplistic piece of technology that I can use for just about anything I need.
I really found it quite amazing. So let's get off the beaten path for a minute. What were some of the differences from working with college guys, where development seems to be the focus, to moving to working with pro guys, where there's much more of a kind of an immediacy to their training?
Yeah. For me, in my experiences, it's almost kind of opposite. When I was in college with strength and conditioning, a lot of those guys would need to be ready pretty quick. For example, I was at East Carolina. We had guys coming in, really talented freshmen. It's we got those guys in the summer, and Cliff did a great job of bringing them in and would put me in a position to be successful with them. But at the end of the day, those guys were going to play in the spring. So having to develop them quickly, but also having the time to develop them in the summer, when they're playing summer ball and things like that.
Over the course of time, yeah.
Yeah, over the course of 4 years was definitely very beneficial. And then, when I got to the Dodgers and I was working in, summer and rookie ball down there in the summer, there were some times where I would want to progress guys faster than others. And, my coordinator or, even some of the guys in the front office would look at me and be like, "Hey, Brandon, this guy's not making it to LA next week. You got time, man." And that was a tough concept for me to understand. But it really shaped me and it really helped mold me. And it was the challenge that I was looking for. I was really looking for somebody to challenge me, and for somebody to say, to question, not necessarily question my thought process or my philosophies, but just question how things are done. Because, when you're in college and you're the baseball guy, everybody's "Oh, you're the shoulder expert, you're the elbow expert," all of these different things, to where there wasn't a lot of people that were challenging me from an X and O standpoint. It was just "Hey, he's the baseball guy, go see him." That's kind of how it was. So for me, that was a really awesome part. But yeah, I mean, just being able to take a step back and really dive in with the hitting coordinators, the pitching coordinators, in pro ball, and understand what their player plan is for them, and then really seeing, again, it was no different. Like, we're the support staff. Like, how do we support those goals that they have for them? And yeah, how do we just continue to push the needle?
I think from my own personal experience with pro guys, like Anthony Volpe was in here. He came in December, and he was going to Tampa in the beginning of February. So I have this guy for like 7 weeks. At this point, I didn't get these guys for like months at a time, maybe 8 weeks sometimes. At that point, I think you're just really trying to show them the way you do things, find the lowest hanging fruit, and try to get that as propped up as possible without taking away anything. That's because these guys are already great, right? You're not trying to mess with Anthony Volpe's hitting mechanics or Dylan Betances' mechanics, in 8 weeks, trying to make too many changes. It's great when you can get those college guys where you have them not only for the offseason, but you have them the freshman year, the sophomore year. And those freshman and sophomore years, right? They're big years to get autonomy from them. Like, for example, things like getting them used to VBT when they get there, right? How many guys didn't want to use VBT, and then after about a month, they can't work out without it?
100%.
Right. So I think that some of the immediacy with pro ball is really just trying to get guys as conditioned as possible to get ready to play without making too many changes, as opposed to college ball. Talking about VBT, what inspired you to start using velocity-based training with your athletes? I'm quite interested because I don't usually come across people other than Dr. Mann, maybe Carl Vahl. There's a couple guys that really use it. I've never really come across too many guys who are really into VBT, because I could sit down and talk to you about VBT for about 8 hours. But I thought this would be a good bulk of the conversation, because this is something that is, to me, is a groundbreaking and game-changing thing that happened in my business about 6 years ago. So what prompted you to start using VBT?
Yeah, for sure. And it all started back at St. John's. Mike Compton, who works for Kaiser now, we were GAs together, and we had the baseball team, and we were using it as, we were like, I didn't know what velocity loss was at the time, but we were using it as a velocity loss measure. And if guys drop below 90%, like we had our Tendo, and we had it set up to where if it went below 90%, we'd get a little beat. Excuse me, and like we would be able to continue our training process from there. But for me, kind of just like you said, like, I believe in velocity-based training. Like, I believe the sun is hot and the sky is blue. Like, velocity-based
Right.
is like, it's awesome. And like, anybody that knows me would tell you, like, hey, like, that's, he's got the same passion for it that you do, Nunzio. But like, it's for me, it's a no-brainer, because you're able to train, and especially in the game of baseball, and especially in college and professional baseball, and when you're traveling around, like, being able to train, like, I can guarantee you that I'm going to train the stimulus that I set out to train every single day, no matter how many pitches they threw, no matter what bus they slept on, no matter what happens, like whether I get 4 reps and I wanted to get 5, or whether I get 10 reps and I wanted to get 3, I set out to get 3. Like, I can guarantee you the stimulus that I set out to train, I'm going to freaking train it. I about got excited there. I'm going to freaking train it, and I'm going to go make sure, like, these guys are ready to go their next game. So, like, for me, VBT has been something that I've rolled with, since 2015.
I think a huge part of it is with college guys, as soon as you don't give them any sort of external cueing to look at, that what is 80% becomes different. It's almost like with guys that are throwing, and you're telling them, let's keep the velocity between 70 and 80%. And after 5 throws, they're at 90%. Leaving guys in the weight room with no recourse for, where is my recovery today? They'll just push the envelope, which sometimes can be good. But with pro guys and with college guys who are playing basically for tuition and for big money, the first concern is injury. And letting these guys understand that, hey, today we're looking for 5'5" to 6'5". Okay. That's the number. Forget about the weight. This is the number. This is the speed, right? If it's 275 today and it was 325 last week, that's okay. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of things that develop from that. It increases intent.
100%.
I see it all the time. You got a college athlete and he's coming in September. He's playing some fall ball. Talk to us a little bit about how you use VBT in that situation to gauge where that athlete should be.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the big things that I would do during the fall season is kind of like you talked about, like the autonomy of things, like kind of treat it like a trial and an error aspect of things, like for what the guys like, what makes them feel good, especially with our starting pitchers. what they like, how they like their body to feel when they go out there and step on the mound. But like we're still training, we're still getting after it, but we would use it, almost as like an auto regulation tool as well, like knowing where they're at. And it's like, okay, we're going to throw 2 bullpens a week. They're on a 7-day rotation. All of that's like take all the baseball into account, and then really be able to plug in the strength and conditioning and the training where it makes sense, but where it's not going to take away from anything, like where it's adding value. I think for me, Nunzio, like that was one of the big things. It's like it also gave me the ability to ensure that I wasn't doing anything from a training standpoint or from like a central nervous system fatigue standpoint, like to take anything away from skill acquisition or performance. Like at no point in time was the weight room crushing what we were doing, from like learning how to bunt or learning how to field a ground ball or like working on their swing in the cage with any of our coaches. Like we were doing exactly what we needed to do for the stimulus that I was looking for. And kind of getting back to your question of like how did I know that they were where they needed to be? We would look at like some of the on field metrics, like look at our TrackMan stuff, our Rapsodo stuff, like what's going on the field, and then like how do we tie that with performance metrics in the weight room, and like are they all singing the same song and dance, or like where's the link? Where's the weak point that we need to be able to go address to say, okay, like maybe they're under recovered, maybe there's not enough stimulus, like where is it, and like what button needs to be pressed to kind of get them where they need to perform optimally.
I think that when guys start throwing, they come to school, there's a whole lot of excitement there. There's a whole lot of guys throwing hard. They're trying to impress guys. They're taking a lot of reps behind the plate. They're swinging hard. And as a result, their central nervous system gets a little bit taxed, and they get into the weight room. And as September becomes the end of September and the beginning of October, that controlled fall, as I like to call it, from playing sports and playing baseball in particular, that starts to take its toll on their body. And I think it's really, really important that if we're trying to go for a stimulus in September and October, that those numbers will help keep a guy honest if he's really feeling tired. You'll see the difference. Some guys playing sports primes their central nervous system. Some guys actually show gains, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the guys that are showing losses, if they don't have something to tell them, hey, dude, you know what? You're a little drained. They'll just blindly keep lifting, and that buildup starts happening. And then you start to see those performance outputs, those key point indicators going down.
No doubt.
The strength zones are something that was developed, was categorized more by Brian Mann. I think it was Verkhoshansky or Jaidovsev, somebody. These strength zones, every group of speeds has an adaptation that it causes. It's really important as we go through the off season. We want to get guys strong, and then we want to get them to use that strength. So basically what we see in a linear periodization is that the speeds start to speed up as the off season gets later and closer to preseason. Can you give us an example, Brandon, of how you would take a guy and maybe not follow that periodization? Give us an example of how something can go on in the off season where you might go left or right with that.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great kind of description of how that stuff works. One of the big things that I look back to is Jake Kuchmaner, left-handed pitcher. He was actually the guy that demoed for me at Wake. Super strong, not as explosive as we would like him to be. He was like high 80s off the mound, left-handed, threw a perfect game at Maryland, like super skilled athlete. But what I started doing with him before I left East Carolina was that we started doing like some velocity loss stuff. So it was like, all right, dude, like I know you're super strong, but let's see how explosive you can be. And really on the strength speed and speed strength side of things, like let's try to tap into this quality as much as possible, because the force output's there. Like you're the strongest dude on the team. You can squat heavy weight. This isn't transferring. Like, how can we get this to transfer? So really went velocity loss and put him, in one of those smaller categories. And there was times where he'd hit 1 rep, 2 reps, and then he would drop below that threshold and be like, all right, dude, that's it. And he's like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like, we just had this conversation. Like, you're done. So then he, would adjust his weight, get in there, readjust his mind and that intent, like you talked about. And, he saw some gains, there in the fall, like up close to 88, 89, I believe. I could be wrong. Somebody can fact check me on that, but was throwing a little bit harder. But, that's the biggest thing that I remember was just having the ability to say like, okay, here's my principles, here's my thought processes, but like velocity loss is a great one for that. Like the 20%, the 40%, the 10%, like depending on what stimulus and adaptation like is beneficial to that player at that point in time. To me, like I tell people this all the time, like VBT feels like a cheat code for me. Like being able to use that and like systemize it the way that I need it. It's like I'm untouchable. I legitimately feel like that. Like that with my ability to look at the way like the body moves and the swing and the delivery, like that paired up with VBT and the other guys I got at 5-tool connection, it's like I feel like an unstoppable force. So it's a lot of fun. I love it.
A good example for me is I have a guy in here right now, Nick Samilla with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I've been training him for years, and Nick came in the offseason this year, and he's huge, knocks the shit out of the ball. Excuse my French. He was having some bat speed issues and his acceleration. I was like, Nick, you can deadlift 550 pounds. You know what I mean? You swing a 30-ounce bat, right? So we did a force velocity profile on him. And I call these guys either gorillas or cheetahs. And he was absolutely a gorilla. So I said, you know what? And you would think in the offseason, guys are going to get strong. And this guy is strong. This guy had a double his body weight squat. He had a 2.5 times his body weight trap bar deadlift. So I said, Nick, check this out. We're not going to do anything over 80% for the next 3 months while you're here. And it was a little weird for him. You know what I mean? I said, this is what we're going to do every 10 days. We're going to give you a full body max strength workout to maintain. And then other than that, we're in accelerative strength the whole time. And he lived at between 6 and 7 meters per second the whole time. We just watched the guy change. The way he moved change. Everything became more athletic. So this is like you said, VBT is a cheat code. And we have no problem with giving guys this. Brian Mann said you could throw VBT units on the floor. If everybody picked one up and you told them how to use it, your training would already be better.
100%.
Right? And kudos to you for adopting VBT, because I can't emphasize to people enough how it changes your training. Talk to us about how your guys have adopted to it once they learn it, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. From a mobility standpoint, I think you and I both feel like that's sort of ground zero when it comes to creating efficient athletes. Talk to us a little bit about your mobility screen and some of the big key players that you look for, that you find are the big key players in an athlete's mobility for the listeners, so they can focus on specific things.
Yeah, I think the ankles, the pelvis, the torso, like internal, external rotation of, various segments of the body. Like I think, can these segments function generally? And if they can't function generally, then there's no way, when you add complexity of the delivery down a slope or complexity of trying to react to a ball in the box, like it's not going to happen. So just being able to be in the right positions at the right time, like we talk about, like, rate of force development is like a big thing with VBT, but like being able to be in the right position to display that strength and power, like is huge. Like you can be as strong as you want, but if you can't get into your back hip, like you don't stand a chance. So like I think that's one of the super fun things about it. But yeah, like we just try to keep it super simple. It's like, does the ankle function properly? Does the hip function properly? Can you control your pelvis? Can you rotate your T-spine? Like all of these things independent of each other, and then add them up, a little bit more complex.
I think that I'm not bad-mouthing throwing drills and hitting drills, because I think they're great and I think that they're necessary most of the time. But guys who do not work on their athletes' mobility, either while they're doing their throwing and hitting drills or prior, they're trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. I don't care what kind of pitching coach you are going to have better success with a guy if he's a good mover.
No doubt.
I mean, where is the rocket science in that as far as it goes? I have a question about that device as well. Can that device also allow a coach to monitor ER and IR passively, do it themselves, or can it only be used by the athlete and be active?
No, it can definitely be passive. Yeah, you can just make a note there, like, and just like, hey, like passive IR, ER with coach's assistance.
We check both. This has been great. How can people get a hold of you?
You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at Coach B Golden. Yeah, shoot me a message. Would love to connect.
And you can reach me at Nunzio Signore on Twitter, or my facility at RPP_baseball on Twitter or Instagram. The website is rocklandpeakperformance.com, and I have a book out released by Human Kinetics, and you can get it on Amazon as well. Velocity-based training: how to apply science, technology, and data to maximize performance. We've been talking today with Brandon Golden, performance coach at 5-Tool Connection. Brandon, thanks for being on. I always love talking shop with a guy who's a movement dude. And until then, stay tuned for the next episode of Behind the Seams podcast.
Appreciate it.
Right on.